and I'll just read it out quickly on page 216. 1, is involved in facilitating drug trafficking with Nassif Modak of the Western Cape. Well, we know that Nassif Modak of the Western Cape is now in prison. 2, is involved in chop shops and the selling of the products thereof. And now chop shop is a colloquial term meaning places where you dismantle stolen cars into component parts and sell the component parts. He's involved in money laundering for criminals in the underworld. 4, he protects certain criminals, notably Mr. Pregi Padeachi, who is a close friend of ex-Deputy National Commissioner Vinesh Kumar Munu, who is currently alleged to be involved in illicit tobacco trade. And 5, he has no security clearance and would not get security clearance because of his covert criminal activities and questionable business activities. Now, these are allegations. They're not factually sound, but they're allegations.
Welcome back to my channel, The Public Record. I'm Andrew. That was Paul O'Sullivan at the Madlanga Commission reading a list of serious allegations about Major-General Feroz Khan: drug trafficking, chop shops, money laundering, protection of criminals, security clearance questions. And then he added the line that matters: these are allegations. So today, we are not treating allegation as fact. We are following the warning trail. Because according to O'Sullivan, this did not start when Khan's name became big in the headlines. He says a warning was already sent in 2021, and not to junior officials. According to the record, the complaint went to former National Commissioner Khehla Sitole and Lieutenant General Godfrey Lebeya. So the question is not only what was alleged about Khan. The sharper question is, when senior police leaders were warned, what happened next?
Annex M, Commissioners, is an email that I sent to the then Commissioner of Police, Commissioner Sitole. Khehla Sitole was the Commissioner of Police in May 2021. And I copied Lieutenant General Lebeya, who at that stage was the head of DPCI. And my email references a tip-off that we had received at Forensics for Justice. So just to be clear, Forensics for Justice has an online tip-off portal, and it also has a telephonic tip-off portal. So people can phone anonymously, and the number is 0800 118 118. And we occasionally get these messages through. And a message came through, and it was a demand to speak to me. And I phoned the person back, and he insisted on providing this information. So what we do, we often get tip-offs, and the information doesn't check out. It doesn't look like something that's genuine. Or sometimes what happens is you'll get a captain who's in dispute with a general, or a colonel who's in dispute with a general, and they'll make spurious complaints. And when we get these tip-offs, before we do anything, we look at the background of it to see if there is anything there. Otherwise, what might be happening is we might be aiding and abetting malicious tip-offs against senior officers. But when we received this tip-off, I met with the person concerned. And the information that was given on the tip-off is listed there.
That is the foundation. O'Sullivan says Forensics for Justice received a tip-off about Khan. He also explains that they do not automatically trust every tip-off because police politics can produce false or malicious complaints. But he says this one was serious enough to package and send upward. That matters because Khan was not sitting in an ordinary office. He was in crime intelligence. That means sensitive information, organized crime intelligence, security clearance, internal trust, and access to information most people will never see. So when a complaint like this lands on the desk of police leadership, the public question is simple: was it tested?
As I've mentioned, Commissioners, pages 218 to 224 is our own research. And from our own research, we were able to see that at that moment in time, remember we're going back to 2021, General Khan was an active director of 10 companies. Now, when we look at some of those companies, which we obviously did some background checks on, we were able to establish that some of the companies were involved in the spare parts business of motor vehicles. And you can see a couple of them there. One is called Spares Oasis. We were able to trace the premises where spare parts for motor cars are being sold from. Another one is called Magic Motor Spares. So when you look at all this, and by the way, there's a PTY called Spares Oasis, and there's also a CC called Spares Oasis. So we take all this information, and then we look at the lifestyle of the individual concerned. And the lifestyle audit that we did gave the indication that this was not a person living on a Major General's salary. It was a lifestyle of a person in a much more affluent position. So all we did was simply supply the information and then say, there you are, that's it. We leave you to get on with it. And it's not our job then to go knocking on the door and saying, hey, what have you done about this? What have you done about that? Because our function is just to supply the information. And that's what we did. And that's made clear in my statement on page 11. And in my email, I think I've said, we find it should be impossible for a full-time Major General in the police to be moonlighting as a director of 10 businesses, and at least 2 of those businesses indicate a trade in spare car parts, an activity diametrically opposed to the work of crime intelligence, given the high levels of vehicle crime in Gauteng. So we're just making the point. That's it.
This is where the testimony moves from a tip-off to a red flag question. O'Sullivan says their checks showed Khan was listed as a director of multiple companies, including businesses linked to motor spares. That does not prove criminality. But it does raise the question O'Sullivan wanted police leadership to test. How does a full-time senior crime intelligence officer sit with outside business interests in a field connected to vehicle parts, while crime intelligence deals with serious organized crime? That is not a small HR issue. That is a conflict question. And in crime intelligence, conflict is not background noise. It can become a security risk.
Okay. You then, firstly, did you ever receive a response to your complaint?
No.
One word. No. O'Sullivan says the warning was sent to Sitole and Lebeya, and he says he received no response. That is the center of this video. Because silence does not tell the public whether the complaint was false, weak, ignored, tested, or buried. A proper system should leave a trail. Received, assessed, investigated, dismissed, escalated, anything. But according to O'Sullivan, there was no response. And then the story takes a turn.
So I supplied that tip-off on the 24th of May. And here we are 30 days later, or 31 days later, a month later, on the 24th of June, with this complaint coming through from Ian Levitt addressed to General Sitole. And it's coincidental that my email is addressed to General Sitole. Now, General Sitole never came back to me about my complaint.
And your annexure end starts at 238. That is then the letter that you say was written, addressed to the National Commissioner.
Yes.
By General Khan's attorneys.
Yes, and I've analysed this letter, and my problem with it, apart from complaining about me highlighting alleged unethical conduct on his part, the lawyer doesn't address any of the allegations whatsoever. No once does he say, my client has done nothing wrong. The whole thing is about complaining about Paul O'Sullivan.
Yes. And at page 239, the same document overleaf, this letter advises the National Commissioner that a meeting subsequently took place between their client, I take it Mr. Khan, and yourself.
Yes.
Can you deal with the contents of that first paragraph?
Yes.
That suggests that a solution was reached.
So, thank you. Commissioners, you have to read paragraphs 4 and 5 together because they belong together.
Yes.
In paragraph 4, he makes the statement that he came to see me on the 15th of June, 2021. It could be correct. I can't remember because I can't remember back that far. But I do remember him coming to see me. And I was quite flabbergasted when he came to see me because when he sat in my boardroom, he said, "You've made a complaint against me." I said, "No, I haven't. I'm hardly going to admit that I've laid a complaint against him because if I say to him, yes, I've made a complaint, here's a copy of it, I may be guilty of the offence of defeating the ends of justice." So I decide, no, I'm just going to deny it. And then he says in this paragraph that at this meeting, I offered to confirm under oath that I hadn't made a complaint against him. Well, I just want to place on record that I never made such an offer. However, if we go on to paragraph 5 of the same letter, the lawyer says, pursuant to the meeting, our client made further inquiries and reliably ascertained that Sullivan, I obviously mean O'Sullivan, was not being truthful, and that in fact not only had Sullivan laid criminal charges with the DPCI, but that Sullivan had accessed our client's personal information in doing so, and in contravention of the Protection of Personal Information Act, POPI. And as I've pointed out earlier, we can access personal information, but not on an arbitrary basis. You can only do it if you're investigating a potential fraud, or for fraud prevention, or for corruption prevention, that sort of thing. So you don't just pick a person at random and say, oh, let's dig into this person. There has to be some probable cause, shall we say. So the tip-off was what made us do the look at this situation, and then we supplied the information. So quite clearly, since I'd sent that email to General Sitole with a copy to General Lebeya, I've not shared it with anybody else. So either somebody at their office or they themselves have shared that information with General Khan. So I've now got him coming to my office demanding to know why I've laid a complaint against him. So I've had to deal with that issue. But I just denied it. I said, no, I didn't lay a complaint against you.
Did you ever pursue either General Lebeya or General Sitole regarding your complaint to establish what had become of it?
So as I mentioned earlier to the commissioners, if I had to pursue every single tip-off that comes through our office to the nth degree, in other words, to keep knocking on the door, but we're eventually going to become a nuisance to somebody. We receive the information, we validate it, and we pass it on. We package it and we pass it on. That's all we do. It's not our job to investigate it. So we just look at it, pass it on, and then we believe it's up to the police. And in this case, it was up to either General Sitole or General Lebeya to look into it. But as I've said in my statement, I didn't hear from them again. So I'm assuming they didn't look into it.
Now, this is the part that makes the warning trail more serious. O'Sullivan says that after he sent the complaint, Khan came to his office and asked whether he had made a complaint against him. Think about that. A complaint is allegedly sent to senior police leadership. Then, the senior officer who is the subject of that complaint allegedly finds out. That creates a second question. separate from the allegations against Khan. Who protected the complaint process? Because when people believe a complaint can travel straight back to the person being complained about, the whole system becomes dangerous. Not only for whistleblowers, for investigators, for witnesses, for internal accountability, for anyone trying to raise a red flag against a powerful officer. And in this case, O'Sullivan says the lawyer's letter did not answer the substance of the allegations. In his version, the focus shifted onto him. That is why this is not just a Khan story. It is a system story.
On the 31st of July, which is the day after I've read this article, and I say, Dear General Masemola, it's most disheartening to read in the media about how rotten crime intelligence is. Police management know about this man Feroz Khan, but what is going to be done about it? And by the way, when I send this email, I attach to it, so I'm forwarding the original email that I've sent 2 years earlier. And I said it will take someone explaining to understand how this man can jet around the country in a jet owned by a tobacco smuggling kingpin, Syed. Of course, I could have used the word alleged, but I didn't. And also drive around in Lamborghinis. I said, does it need for him to be caught with a smoking gun for the management to get rid of him? And when I talk about management commissioners, I'm talking about management of the police. And then I say, I'm copying the editor of News 24, as I believe the people of South Africa have a right to know what's been going on. And then I say, I finish the email up with, although General Sitole did not bother to respond to my mail in May 2021, perhaps you will be able to do so.
Did you receive a response to this communication? And if so, what was, in summary, the response?
No, Commissioners, no response whatsoever. And by that stage, I think it became the order of the day that any such communications were just ignored.
2 years later, O'Sullivan says Khan's name surfaced again, this time around a media report involving an EFF gala dinner and alleged links to people in the illicit tobacco trade. So O'Sullivan says he wrote again, this time to General Fannie Masemola, and his message was blunt. Police management knew about Khan. That is O'Sullivan's evidence, and again he says there was no response. So now the timeline has two dates, 2021 to 2022, a warning to Sitole and Lebeya, a follow-up to Masemola, and, according to O'Sullivan, no visible action. But then the commission asked the question that must be asked.
Around General Khan's companies, was there any evidence that you provided to either General Masemola, General Lebeya, or General Sitole that constitutes evidence to support the allegations you make in your previous communication to them of May 2021? Or is it what you have shared with the Commission now that you made available to these generals?
I was not able to supply any prima facie evidence. If I had prima facie evidence, Commissioners, apart from notifying the management of the police, I would have opened a criminal docket. But you cannot open a criminal docket based on a hypothesis. So what we would have expected to do as Forensics for Justice, we expected the management of the police to take this and look at it.
Yes.
But unfortunately, nothing was done.
Noted.
That clip gives the balance. The commission asked O'Sullivan what evidence he actually provided, and he admits he did not have prima facie evidence. That is important. He is not saying he handed police a complete criminal case. He is saying he handed police serious allegations, background checks, and red flags that should have triggered an internal investigation. That is the clean distinction. Not proof, a warning. And the next question is about duty. When serious allegations are raised about a senior crime intelligence officer, must a private investigator prove the whole case before police management moves? Or must police management use its own systems to test the warning? They could check the directorships, they could check security clearance, they could ask Khan for explanations, they could investigate the alleged links, they could clear him if the claims were false. But according to O'Sullivan, the response was silence. So let's keep this straight. O'Sullivan did not prove Khan guilty at the commission, but he did place a warning trail on the record, a 2021 tip-off, allegations involving organized crime, company directorship questions, a complaint allegedly sent to Sitole and Lebeya, a lawyer letter issue after Khan allegedly became aware of the complaint, a 2023 follow-up to Masemola, and then the commission's pushback. Where is the prima facie evidence? That is the balance. The allegations still need to be tested. Khan still has the right to answer. But police leadership also has a question to answer. If the warning was weak, where is the record showing it was checked and dismissed? And if the warning was serious, why was it not acted on? That is what makes this testimony important. Not because every allegation is proven, but because the public can now see the warning trail and the silence around it. That is what is on the record. Was this a warning police leadership ignored, or an allegation too untested to act on? Subscribe to The Public Record, and I'll see you in the next one.